Many centuries before the Targaryen conquest of Westeros, the Valyrian Freehold ruled much of western Essos. Expanding from the Valyrian Peninsula, they used their dragons to defeat established civilizations and raised their own cities and colonies. As they reached the western coast of the continent, they established many of the settlements that would come to be known as the Free Cities, which were administered largely as independent city-states, though still under the purview and protection of Valyria. In 114 BC, a terrible disaster known as the Doom of Valyria destroyed the ancient city and broke apart the peninsula. Without a strong central government to keep the peace and provide stability, the continent was engulfed in 100 years of chaos and war. The Century of Blood saw many of the former Valyrian territories fighting, and saw the invasion of the Dothraki, a wild, nomadic warrior race from the Far East, migrating west and rampaging through former Valyrian territories. Eventually, many of the surviving factions achieved some level of peace, aided by the defeat of the Dothraki army in Qohor, halting their western expansion. Among the cities to survive the Bleeding Years were the 9 free cities of Essos, many of whom would become trading partners to Westeros, with political and military ties to the 7 kingdoms. Beginning in the north, there is the city of Braavos, originally founded by escaped slaves from Valyria, who killed their masters, stole their ships, and located an isolated lagoon to found their settlement. They outlawed slavery, naming it the first law of Braavos, and kept their city secret from the rest of the world for 100 years. This canal city, which built a great statue known as the Titan of Braavos at the entrance of their harbor, is ruled by a Sea Lord who holds the position for life and is protected by his champion, the First Sword of Braavos. The Sea Lord is chosen by the city magisters and key holders, a powerful ruling class within the city. Braavos is known as a place of religious diversity with many temples and shrines dedicated to the many faiths of Essos and Westeros, including the infamous House of Black and White, where a group of assassins called the Faceless Men worship Death, who they name the Many-Faced God. The richest and most powerful of the free cities, Braavos owes much of its financial success to the Iron Bank, which loans money to foreign powers, and their robust trade culture, which has Braavosi ships sailing as far east as Ashai. A coastal city, they are known for trading in many varieties of fish, as well as oysters, eels, clams, rays, crabs, and crawfish. They are also known for producing a famous dark purple dye, found only in Braavos. Known figures of Braavosi heritage include Syrio Forel, a former First Sword and mentor to Arya Stark, and Tycho Nestoris, a representative of the Iron Bank who makes a deal with Jon Snow of the Night's Watch and King Stannis Baratheon. Further east, there is the city of Lorath, located on the largest of 3 islands along the northern coast. The smallest, poorest, and least populated of the free cities, they were once home to an ancient people known as the Maze Makers, but were colonized in 1436 BC by Valyrian settlers who worshipped the blind god Boash, establishing a culture that denied the self, developing speech patterns that referenced a man or a woman rather than I or you. In addition, they considered men and women completely equal, and while the Boash religion has largely been abandoned, these cultural influences remain. They were once ruled by a harvest prince, fisher prince, and prince of the streets, but are now governed by a council of magisters made up of the local aristocracy. They trade in salt cod, walrus tusks, seal skins, and whale oil, while also focusing on the production of rich velvet, which they trade for steel and other goods. The steel they acquire is then traded along the Shivering Sea for furs, ivory, and obsidian. A known figure from Lorath is Jaqen H'ghar, the faceless assassin who killed 3 men for Arya Stark and invited her to find the Temple of Black and White in Braavos. The city of Norvos was founded by followers of bearded priests, worshippers of a mysterious god whose name is only revealed to initiates of the priesthood. They built their city in a location that was once occupied by a primitive people who built small villages, possibly related to the ancient Andals. But these people were believed to have been driven out of their lands by invaders from the east, known as the Hairy Men. Norvos is also the site of an important battle which saw Carlon the Great, king of all the Andals, defeat the Norvosi army twice in the field, then laying siege to the city. However, Norvos called on their allies in Valyria, who sent 100 dragon lords to kill the Andal king, destroying his army and ending the siege. Their society and culture is largely based around the ringing of 3 bells, which govern every aspect of their day-to-day lives and are ruled by a council of magisters chosen by the bearded priests. They are known to produce beautiful tapestries, engaging in heavy trade with Lorath, and are known to use fermented goat's milk to make a drink they call nasha. Known figures from Norvos include the Dornish warrior Areo Hota and Doran Martell's wife, Lady Malario, mother to his 3 children. Moving to the western coast, there is the city of Pentos, a prosperous trade settlement ruled by a group of rich merchants, who in turn choose a prince as the figurehead of their territory. The prince lives a lavish lifestyle, however should the city suffer a defeat in battle or famine, the prince is sacrificed to the gods, and a new ruler is selected. They have also learned to avoid devastation by establishing a relationship of tribute payments to several Dothraki Khalasars, paying them handsomely in exchange for being spared from the worst of their raiding. Their economy is largely based off trade, moving spices and gemstones through their harbors. They also once dealt heavily in slavery, but made the practice illegal after losing a war to Braavos. Well-known figures from Pentos include Illyrio Mopatis, a friend to Varys the Spider and influential merchant of the city, as well as the Tattered Prince, leader of the Windblown Mercenary Company. The city of Qohor, also known as the City of Sorcerers, was founded by followers of a dark god they called the Black Goat, who demanded daily blood sacrifices, seeing the Qohori kill both animals and humans in their religious rituals. After the doom of Valyria, a dragon lord named Aurion rallied 30,000 soldiers from Qohor and declared himself first emperor of Valyria, flying his dragon south to reconquer the Valyrian Peninsula. However, after departing, the dragon rider and his army were never heard from again. During the Century of Blood, a Dothraki Khalasar of 50,000 warriors invaded the territory, defeating their army and the sellsword companies hired to defend their lands. However, before the Dothraki could sack the city, an army of 3,000 unsullied warriors they had purchased arrived and defended their gates, repelling 18 charges by the Dothraki horde and killing approximately 12,000 of their warriors, including their leader, Khal Temo. Since their victory in the Battle of Qohor, the city has almost exclusively relied on unsullied warriors for their protection. The city has prospered over the years as a trade gateway between the Free Cities and the Dothraki Sea, but they were much wealthier before the fall of so many territories in the east, which were conquered by the Dothraki during the Century of Blood. They are known to trade large amounts of lumber and produce excellent tapestries and wood carvings. They are also known as expert armor and weaponsmiths, now one of the only places in the world to still possess the knowledge of reforging Valyrian steel. Well-known figures from Qohor include Vargo Hoat, leader of the Brave Companions Mercenary Company, and Tobo Mott, the blacksmith hired by Tywin Lannister to reforge the Valyrian steel sword Ice, creating Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper. Further south, there is the city of Myr, another prosperous territory with a culture devoted to education and the arts, making them one of the most advanced of the free cities. After the fall of Valyria, they were conquered by Volantis until eventually rebelling after a coalition rose to stop Volantene expansion. Myr is also known to have some of the finest artisans in the world, creating glassware, tapestries, paintings, and miniatures, as well as producing fire wine, pale green nectar wine, carpets, blankets, screens, mirrors, and lace. Some notable Myrish figures include Thoros of Myr, the Red Priest working with the Brotherhood Without Banners in the Riverlands, and Lady Sarala, wife of Lord Denys Darklyn, who may have encouraged her husband to imprison King Aerys II during the defiance of Duskendale. Located on one of the islands of the Stepstones, the city of Tyrosh was founded as a military outpost for Valyria, but grew into a proper settlement, bolstered by the discovery of several snail species, which allowed them to produce highly valued dyes for trade. After the fall of Valyria, Volantis attempted to conquer the city, but were repelled by an alliance of powers including Tyrosh, Pentos, the Stormlands of Westeros, and the island of Dragonstone, seeing Aegon Targaryen riding his dragon into battle, burning a Volantene fleet attacking Lys. Many years later, Tyrosh became home to the Westerosi exiles of House Blackfyre and their supporters, even participating in the 5th Blackfyre Rebellion, also known as the War of the Ninepenny Kings. Tyrosh is heavily involved in the slave trade, having developed a trade culture, also producing impressive armor pieces, highly prized dyes, and pear brandy. An example of a well-known figure hailing from Tyrosh is Daario Naharis, captain of the Stormcrows Mercenary Company and ally to Daenerys Targaryen. Moving to another island city-state, there is the beautiful territory of Lys, where the blood of old Valyria runs strong, producing silver-gold-haired offspring with purple eyes. The city has become famous for its pleasure houses, worshipping a goddess of love and creating such a pleasurable environment. They became a resort location for the Dragon Lords of Valyria. After the Doom, Lys was conquered by Volantis, but they rebelled after an alliance of city-states devastated the Volantine army and naval fleet. They are heavily involved in the slave trade, producing some of the finest pleasure slaves in the world, also trading red and white wine, fine tapestries, sweet perfumes, and fine long dirks. They are also known to make powerful poisons, including the Strangler and the Tears of Lys. Some well-known figures from Lys include the spy master Varys the Spider and the pirate Salladhor Saan. The cities of Myr, Tyrosh, and Lys briefly joined together from 96 AC to 130 AC, becoming known as the Triarchy, as well as the Kingdom of the Three Daughters. However, after several wars in the Narrow Sea, the Triarchy dissolved, and the cities went to war with each other, fighting over the disputed lands for many years to come. The oldest of the free cities, Volantis, is known as the first daughter of Valyria, and grew prosperous as a trading post between Old Valyria and the Rhoynar city-states. Protected by great black walls, the city of Volantis attempted to reconquer the lands of Valyria after the doom and fall of the Freehold, conquering the cities of Lys and Myr. However, they were eventually defeated by a Tyroshi alliance, and the empire collapsed, returning to the protection of their walls. The Volantine are known to have the blood of Old Valyria, with many families tracing their lineage directly to the Freehold. This has created a prestigious aristocracy, forming a deep political divide in the city between the old money noble class and new money merchant class, further displayed by the volatile political relationship between the competing parties known as the Tigers and Elephants. The Volantine economy is largely based on the slave trade, acting as a trade port between the free cities and Slavers' Bay, and are also a gateway to the Jade Sea, seeing silk and spices pass through their harbor. They also produce sweet beets and sweet red wine and develop the game of Savas. A notable figure from Volantis is the fool known as Patchface, a mentally impaired man who may have the gift of prophecy, working as a servant to King Stannis Baratheon. Nearing the southern continent of Sothorios, the city of Gogosos was founded in the Basilisk Isles by the Giscari Empire before becoming a penal colony for the Valyrian Freehold, and then a pirate den after the Doom. They grew rich off the slave trade during the Century of Blood and were considered by some as the 10th free city for a time, until they were devastated by a plague known as the Red Death, seeing 9 of every 10 dying in agony. Located in the Dothraki Sea, the colony of ASOIAF was a newly formed Valyrian settlement which became independent after the Doom. And while they prospered for a time, bolstered by their trade with Sarnor, the territory was eventually destroyed by the Dothraki during the Century of Blood, renamed Vez Kadok, meaning the City of Corpses, known to many as the Lost Free City. A special thanks to all those who have contributed to CivilizationEx. You make these videos possible, and I am eternally grateful for your support. If you would like to help CivilizationEx and want a say in the future content of this channel, click on the Patreon link in the description box below, and pledge any amount you'd like on a monthly basis. Or if you would prefer to make a single donation, you can use the PayPal link, also in the description below. And please be sure to like and subscribe, and click on the links to see more.